Hi guys.
So, welcome. Marie, are you going to start? Do you want to start?
I let you do it, Anthony. You always start our sessions in such a
Okay.
good way. So
Well,
please go
uh,
ahead.
all right. So, we're here today and we're talking about ISO 27001. I'm here with Maria Dimitra and Pamela D'Amato. And I think one of the things about 27001, and just to kick this off, we decided to do this before the whole thing with colonial oil came up. And right now, colonial oil supplies 45% of the oil on the East Coast in the United States. And they are shut down since Sunday. They are shut down because they had a hack. And their hacker is like a ransomware attack, and they have been shut down. The President Biden has talked about it, and everybody is looking into it to find out what happened to the hack because this is a major implication. But what they had was a computer hack that has shut down their oil company on the East Coast. They said that the oil will be up on Friday. They will have it up, some up, but not the total company will not be running. But this was a hack. This was a ransomware attack on their company, and it has shut down like the oil movement. Prices are going up. Prices went up 8 cents on Saturday. They've gone up on Sunday. Today is Tuesday. They're expecting the oil and gas prices to continue to rise. So we're here today and we are talking about ISO 27001. You know, if they can hack those people, imagine what they can do to like a little company. And I've had the situations where people have come to us and they had been hacked like last week or something like that. You don't have to let the horses out of the barn. Close the barn door first. ISO 27001 is the barn door. So please, ladies, here we are today discussing ISO 27001.
Well, what's nice on this in this meeting, we have Maria Dimitrova, who is actually based in our London office, and she happens to be a 27001 assessor and auditor. So she knows the specifics in the process of actually getting ISO 27001 certified and what that entails. So as we go through this, Maria is going to be able to put on the screen some of the specific things that she goes over as an assessor or an auditor, and even pre-audits in the assessor portion of it prior to an audit, a full certified audit, to ensure that any company that goes with IMSM for ISO certification or for implementation only or consultation only, that they will actually pass their final certification for that audit for their certification. But one of the things that is extremely helpful is that when you work with IMSM, we actually cover all 114 controls. So each one of those controls has a specific function, and we ensure that every single one of those controls are implemented into your process. And a lot of companies that I work with, for them to be able to get 27001 certified or even just working with us for implementation into their process, they think that it is such an ordeal or that it's a very, very difficult process, that they have to hire somebody specifically for this. And that's simply not the case. And in some cases, which I'm dealing with right now with a couple right now, 3 accounts this week that they have a critical timeline. And I don't know if everybody that's going to be watching this is familiar with anyone that does work with the government for Department of Defense, any of their vendors, suppliers, or anyone that works with them in absolutely any capacity. They were given a notice about 90 days ago that they need to be 27001 certified, actually certified by August 31st of this year. So, excuse me, that I don't know if I'm sure the people that were notified they're kind of scrambling and trying to figure out how this can be done. But IMSM actually has many 27001 auditors and assessors that can help, and with whatever capacity that we're working with, as far as many companies needing this right now, we are able to accommodate you. So with that in mind, Maria, do you want to go ahead and go over exactly, as an assessor and auditor, some of the things, or what specifically you do and the process, so people understand that this is completely doable for them?
Indeed, Pamela. Thank you very much for inviting me to join this session. Real pleasure to be with you guys. Always nice to talk to you and the general public on social media. So you have raised several very interesting issues. In the first place, let me confirm that we have very ample expertise and experience in ISO 27001 implementations. We've carried out over 3,000 of those in the last few years worldwide. So as you say, we're really very experienced, and we have a very good methodology allowing us to help organizations go through all steps. Now, I'm not going to hide the fact that ISO 27001 is quite an extensive standard with all the controls in the annex and the work that involves. But there is a very bright side of everything. It's the 21st century. It's 2021, and we have survived several very serious adverse events. So if we are here at this moment in time, we have certainly done something very, very well. I mean that most companies don't realize that they actually have a functioning system. It is not about starting from scratch, but finding their strengths and helping them out, highlighting the strengths, pushing them slightly, working with them just to fully cover the standards requirements with regards to information security. And from there, taking them through all the steps needed just to go to the final certification stage and get certified against the standard. So another very interesting issue that you've raised is about how important the standard has become in different countries. Let's say that in most countries, implementing ISO 27001 is not mandatory. However, some countries have published regulations that require certain industries to implement the standards. And this is the case in the United States, where it has become a legal requirement organizations working on government projects, and by extension to their stakeholders or interested parties, to actually get certified against the standard requirements. So we refer to stakeholders as interested parties for clarity. Reason being, and now I'm back to Anthony's point with the oil and energy company, reason being that we might have some linguistic misunderstandings if we refer to them as stakeholders, because back to our hackers issue, do you call a hacker stakeholder or not? You probably don't, although from an information security point of view, they are stakeholders. It sounds really not natural to call them stakeholders, but they are interested parties. Why? Because they affect what we do. And our target is to affect them by what we do, preventing them from hurting us. So to the full extent of the standard, they are stakeholders. And we are very likely to omit to consider them in our list of interested parties if we don't call them interested parties, but stakeholders. Do I make any sense?
Absolutely.
Make
Thank you.
perfect sense. Exactly.
So my first recommendation to companies or any kind of organizations is to focus on their organizational environment. This is clause 4 in the standard. So all ISO management system standards focus on the organizational environment, identifying the interested parties. This means that we need to list everyone, individuals, organizations that can affect our activities by what they do, and everyone, individuals, organizations that our activities can affect. And all those parties should be considered relevant to our information security. This is the first step. This is a very good exercise, and I suspect that you're going to ask me how much work it would suppose to the IT department. Aren't I correct?
Absolutely.
Well, none, because it's actually a top management responsibility. That's an interesting thing. Most organizations have traditionally been reluctant to consider ISO 27001 implementation for a very simple reason, because their IT departments think that it adds additional work to what they already do. Interestingly enough, it doesn't, because an ISO 27001 management system actually is not a technical solution. It's a management solution. It helps organizations establish processes to optimize what they do and thus make their IT department work the amount of work they're expected to, and not additional amount of works are supposed to be carried out. So, guys, do you have any questions with regards to identifying interested parties and workload? If you don't, carry on, Anthony, please.
No, I was just going to say I thought of a couple of things that came up, and one, I know that whenever we were talking earlier about the DoD, and I know they based the 27001 and the DoD, that was they based their information security system on the 27001, and that's one of the reasons why they require people to have it. And that was something I think from even back in 2013 that they were starting out using the whole thing from the 27001. Another thing that I thought about was the GDPR, and I know that I'm in New York, Pamela's in California, and Maria is in the UK. And I know that in the California, they have a big thing. They have a thing that's something somewhat like the GDPR, where what information people can use or not use about and how you can access or share employee information is like a big thing out there. So that was really a big thing. And I know that when we talked about, you were saying about the breaches, the majority of the breaches are not technical breaches, they're human error. You know, and that was one
Absolutely.
of the things about like the different levels of security and how we are and what we are and what size and that kind of thing. And one of the most important things, like when you're working with the DoD, people often think of like these large corporations and that, but anybody can have like a contract that has something to do with the government. You can be a third party supplier or a first party supplier. But the idea is if there's one person in the company or there's hundreds or thousands, that all these things come into play. So these are just a couple of the things I was thinking about when you were saying things and how they draw back into like the greater picture of like how 27001 works. It's like so many times that I see people and you have like different companies and I used the example before of like we worked with a company that had they were making barcodes for Microsoft, and then they were also making their own platforms, and they were using like outside sources to make those platforms. But when they were using like outside, they were using Scrum and Agile and different things like that to make those own platforms, and they were worried about like security and how does it work. when these people are not even in the same room, and how that all works out. But with the 27,001 and the 114 controls, it comes down to like a way of life, not like that something that it's not like an albatross. It's a way of life, and once you understand the way of life that it is, and everybody is a part of that system, it really works, and it can work for you.
Absolutely, you're right, Anthony. Basically, because suppliers are very important. They can be easily the back door to big companies. So they're required to cover the information security aspects on their own. They're very, very important.
Another aspect a lot of companies don't consider or even know that 60% of the time hacks actually happen because of their employees.
Absolutely.
And so when they don't understand that, when they're considering whether or not they should do this, once they understand some of the facts and I should say statistics, when 60% of the hacks happen because of the employees, of their misuse, or even their cell phones, they actually have interruptions with their cell phones and their access to their data and information. One of the companies that I'm working with right now, they actually are considering this because of the fact that their vendors and their not only vendors and suppliers, but their customers, it's a very large manufacturer, and they deal with many different countries. Very large accounts are their customers. And if they got hacked, every single one of their customers, every single one of their vendors and suppliers, everyone that's in their database would be hacked. That would be a multi-million dollar problem for them. So for them to spend the money to be able to have this insurance of having ISO 27001 certification, it definitely has a good return on investment for them. So Harvard studies actually show that for every $1 spent in this category, that they will see a minimum of a $6 to a $16 return on investment. But I personally know that 27,001 has a higher return on investment. So when everyone that is considering that does do business, that every email that comes and goes into their system could be at risk. And when you look at that on how many emails are sent every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year, this is a very good insurance policy to be able to have 27,001 certification.
Absolutely. Let me just say that at the very moment you go with a certification, your insurance policy goes down. That's the first return on your investment, and then everything that your certification can prevent. So I'm bringing up on screen what I do when I identify the strengths of an organization. So as I say, it's an extensive work. It requires efforts, but it requires management efforts first, and then any technical issues to be covered if needed. So let me walk you through everything we've been discussed, because Anthony mentioned compliance. We talked about human engineering, which is probably the worst and the most difficult effect of hacking. So machines do not make mistakes, people do. And let me show you how we can help organizations identify what they do and take it from there to implement and certify an efficient ISO 27001 management system. As I say, when we start talking to organizations, we also start with a very quick question about the previous certifications, any potential certification, if 27001 better, and if there is any, we ask for certificate, or if there is no certification at all, we interview top management to understand their position with regards to why not, etc. So then we base on our investigation on the perception about interested parties. Again, we try to make them understand that every single individual organization that may affect their activities must be considered, as well as every single individual organization that can be affected by the activities. They are also stakeholders, they are also interested parties, and we need to take them in consideration. So what kind of interested parties that could be? Suppliers, customers, employees, as well as authorities, regulatory bodies, hackers, everyone that might be somehow trying to affect us somehow. So an interesting aspect would be going through all 14 sections that cover the Annex A, just to identify how much has already been done before we start designing the steps and start helping organizations with the implementation. For instance, first control would be the information security policies, because we need to make sure that the policies exist, that all policies are approved by management, and all policies are communicated to employees. You guys raised a very valid point. Most threats come from inside the organizations, not from outside the organization. So communication, policies are the fundamentals. They're essential to covering our backs. So next step would be to consider the organization of information security. That would be Annex A, Control 6. So we'll ask about the information security roles and responsibilities. For instance, are responsibilities clearly identified? Have they been clearly communicated to relevant parties? We'll inquire about the segregation of duties. We'll inquire about how authorities are contacted, about procedures, processes, routine contacts, and how intelligence is generally shared. So another important point would be information security assessments, as well as mobile device policies and policies on teleworking. If you think about ISO 27001, the latest version, the current one, was published in what year? 2013. And it already considered what? Mobile device policies and policies on teleworking. 8 years, 7-8 years before COVID, before everyone went home, nearly everyone anyway, the standard already considered the need for mobile and teleworking policies. So most companies could manage this transition because there was already a common framework to adhere to, ISO 27001. Guys, before I carry on, do you have any questions?
Yes. So if you can also explain, I understand that there's going to be some additional updates or changes that are going to be happening within the very near future. I believe it's September. Can you, Maria, explain if somebody's considering doing this and they're thinking, should I just wait until the code is updated? Can you kind of walk them through why it would actually make sense to do it now, and the changes of what's upcoming in the immediate near future?
Brilliant question. Thank you, Pamela. So that's a very, very good point. Actually, the standard is not going to be changed. Let me explain that each standard has exactly the same structure, 10 clauses, and these clauses within 20,001 is not going to be changed. What is going to be changed is the Annex A, which considers the 14 sections with 114 controls currently. Some organization may have more controls even, but let's say that those 114 controls are considered to be the best set of best practice to prevent hackers and adverse events with regards to information security to happen to organizations. So these controls are going to be updated. So if organizations currently considering ISO 27001 implementation are serious about it, please, please, please do not delay it. Basically because the standard is not going to change. What is going to change? That's Annex A. Anyway, each organization is offered the opportunity to make a choice which annex and which controls they may like to follow. So don't delay an ISO 27001 implementation because the standard is exactly the same. What changes? That's the Annex A, and it can be adapted at any moment. Thanks to our expertise and very wide experience, we're going to help you guys. Just don't delay it. That's going to be my message.
Very good, very good. That answers a lot of questions, I'm sure, for a lot of people that are teetering and tottering on whether or not I should do it now or later. That's perfect. That means they should still do it now.
I know, and they may be really confused because, as you say, Pamela, US companies working in transport, energy, information technology and telecommunications, finance, aerospace, research, water supplies, all those strategic sectors that are affected may be really confused. What do we do? Shall we carry on? Shall we wait for the next one? Now, there is no reason to stop the implementation. Just carry on as planned. And the standard is flexible. It's going to adapt around your activities. It's not the opposite. Organizations do not adapt to standards. They actually adapt standards to their activities. Although it sounds slightly weird, I could explain it, but let me carry on with what we do for our customers to make them feel comfortable and to help them identify their strengths. Shall I carry on?
Absolutely.
So another very important section goes on human resources. So the standard helps us with our screening, background verifications, checks about compliance, all levels required in order to support our business risk and risk assessment. So we have a section on terms and conditions. We inquire about employees, contractors, and again, third-party users. Are they asked to sign confidentiality or non-disclosure agreements? Do employment or service contracts specifically cover the need to protect business information? So we talk about management responsibilities and engage with top management to identify all relevant information. So we talk about awareness, key point. So human resources is a very important section within Annex A, and it helps organizations understand how important communication, how important awareness is as well. So we help them identify what they do with regards to employees, contractors, and any kind of third-party users as well. We focus on how important disciplinary processes are, termination, or very important, change of employment responsibilities maybe, because most organizations fail to understand that not only when terminations occur, but also when changes within the structure occur, they need to carry on some verifications and document their processes, just to make sure that changes do not compromise their security. Any questions with regards to human resources, guys?
No, that's very helpful. I think a lot of companies don't realize when they have a change of personnel, steps that they need to take at that time with both the incoming new personnel and also the ones that are leaving the company. I would imagine there's steps that can be put in place to ensure the confidentiality of the work, that especially of what that employee has done.
Absolutely. This is key to the implementation, and we have designed our methodology around that key point to help them identify internal threats coming from their own employees. Because, it's not only what we have as site management, our next key topic, but also that unstructured information we own in our heads and how we can manage it. So, asset management is key to information security as well. So we will talk about how inventory of assets are carried out. We will go through ownership, acceptable use of assets, return of assets, classification of information, labeling, which is very important. Is there a process or procedure for ensuring information classification is appropriately marked on each asset? We ask. So we'll make sure we identify how assets are handled, and very important, management of removable media. So management of removable media is kind of a struggling point. All those USB sticks we have in our pockets?
Yeah.
That's really an issue to information security. So that's a point, because how do you dispose of those USB sticks? Do you dispose of them safely? That's an issue to many organizations. They even don't know how many USB sticks they have handed out. We talk about physical media transfer, and that's an important topic, because in the 21st century, most organizations have completely forgotten about the fact that we still need to transfer media in a very physical way.
That's correct.
So millennials and younger people who have recently joined our organizations are not aware of how important physical communication, physical transfer is. My own daughter, she's digital, she's no longer physical, so we have to carry out risk assessment at home to make her aware of the fact that actually physical threats are very real threats to her digital world. So next control goes on access control. And we'll be talking to companies to identify their control policies, access to network and network services, user registration, deregistration, user access provisioning, management of privileged access rights, and management of secret authentication information of users. So all those questions are going to be nicely asked. Records are going to be taken in order to identify what we have, what we don't have, and how we can get it quickly and safely, how we can, most importantly, communicate it to all relevant interested parties. Again, employees, third parties such as authorities, suppliers, customers, the public in general. So, our next topic is cryptography. What do you think cryptography involves, such as potential threats, guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would not know. Anthony, do you know?
I'm gonna find out right now.
Sorry about that, guys. I just asked the question because I wanted you to say exactly what you've just said. So I don't know. Well, cryptography is a tricky one. We have only two controls on that one. And the first one, please be aware, the first one, it says policy on the use of cryptographic control. What does it mean? It does actually mean something very interesting. We need to control what we do with cryptographic controls and the use of cryptographics, basically because you may not know it, but there is no any harmonized cryptographic system in the world. Different regulations and legislations apply in each country. We may need to move information assets too. So first thing would be to have a policy to identify the needs for the use of cryptographic controls. Because let's say in the US, you can't use cryptographics on an individual basis. It's not legal, but it is in France. And so on. If we start enumerating different countries, we'll see that different legislation with regards to cryptography applies. So first thing first, we need to make sure that we have a policy to identify what is legal with regards to cryptography. Most organizations don't understand that point. They just think that if they have good cryptographic controls in place, they're covered. That may be completely illegal in some countries. Anyway, back to a very physical aspect. ISO 27001, it may come as a surprise to many, is not actually focused on cybersecurity. It is focused on information security. And physical and environmental security is a big chunk within 27001. We have to consider it. We have to make sure that we have a proportionate system into place. So we don't need to fly helicopters above our roof to make our organization secure. We may just need to close our door, to have some very simple but efficient and proportionate response to the threat. Do I make any sense?
Absolutely, 100%.
Definitely, because I thought of two situations with the physical security, and one of them was when we worked in the past with like a photography company or a video editing company, and they had all their ISOs, like they had one section which was completely sectioned off that they worked in. They edited film, and when they were editing the film, it's like nothing leaves this room, nothing comes in, nothing comes out. So that's like one of the physical elements that they had, that they were really wanted to make sure that no one has a picture of some famous movie star, like leaving the building, or we have this physically secure area.
Absolutely. Working in secure areas, we're going to ask, do secure areas exist? Where they do exist, do secure areas have suitable policies and processes? Are the policies and processes enforced and monitored? That's very important. So we'll consider delivery and loading areas. How do you manage your loading areas? So how about equipment? How about supporting utilities? How about cabling security? All these elements need to be regarded, need to be considered, documented, discussed, and improved. So we have quite a lot to consider within this important physical and environment security section. Then we go to operation security, and we're going to talk about quite a lot of operational procedures. And I would like to attract your attention on change management. So most organizations forget it's not only it doesn't happen only with 27001, but with almost every single ISO management system standard. Most organizations just forget about change management. That's very important. All ISO standards require for organization to consider changes. Is there a controlled change management process in place is our first question. So that's really very important. Why? Again, if you make any changes, you can easily compromise your organization within your internal procedures. So it's again your internal staff compromising the organizations and not external threats. We'll talk about backup. We'll talk about logging, protections of the log information, administration and the log operations, clock syncing, something as easy as that, as simple as syncing your clocks. Why? Because you need to have a very well-designed protection of your log information. If your clocks are not synced, you may face a major disruption, a major threat. You may not identify some threats coming in. And so on. We'll go through all these areas within our operation security chunk of controls to make sure that our system is fully operational, it is well designed, it is robust, and most importantly, it's also very, very flexible. Guys, do you have any questions or comments with regards to operation security?
Yeah, I have a question for overall, and I'm sure absolutely anyone who's considering 27001 would have this question. How long does the typical gap analysis take? Because I know that's the first step, and these items you're covering right now are part of the gap analysis. So just take an average, because I know we have companies that would take much longer than others, and then ones that are like two-man shop companies that wouldn't take as long. Can you just give an average so somebody can have an understanding of the time frame, because this is the very first step of working with one of our assessors?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Pamela. Normally, when I book myself for a gap analysis, I book a whole day. It doesn't mean that the organization needs to remain with me for the whole day. It may or may not. Normally, it's going to be finished within a couple no, a couple of hours, definitely not, but half a day of their time. And then I would need also to ask them to deliver some evidence of what has been discussed. So it might take them some time, couple of hours maybe, to find the information and provide it to me, because I need to review it, I need to make my notes, I need to elaborate my gap report for them and for my assessors here, my collaborators, basically to discuss what steps would follow next. So let's say one day between all of us for a very well-designed, exhaustive, and nicely done gap analysis. Now, if we have a customer with a certified ISO 27001, it might take a couple of hours only. So yeah, I normally book myself for a day just to make sure that the gap analysis and the reports are properly done.
Okay, and then another question for you, Maria, which I'm sure anybody that would be looking at and watching this, what other ISO codes blend very well with 27001?
Oh, thank you for the question. I'll scroll down to Control A17 then, and I'll show you that's supply relationship, that's information security incident management. Okay, section 17, information security aspects of business continuity management. So thank you for the question, Pamela. That would be ISO 22301 business continuity. As Anthony said at the beginning, business continuity applies to all kinds of organizations that would like to keep delivering services and products to a minimum acceptable level, rather than stopping their product deliveries and getting us, their stakeholders, paying more for fuel. So business continuity links nicely to ISO 27001 and basically protects organizations from both information security breaches and business continuity breaches. I highly recommend to organizations to consider an integrated management system with 22301 and 27001. If they are up for the challenge, we can do it. We can help them out with those standards. We have good experience and the required enthusiasm and motivation to do it.
Wonderful. That's great. That's good to know. Anthony,
Yeah.
what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I mean, one of the most important things is the business continuity. Everyone thinks that nothing will happen to them, whether it's talking about hacking or the ship that got caught in the Suez Canal, or they think it's not going to happen to them or it's not going to affect them. And now we see like all these companies all over the East Coast, they're scrambling. When the boat got stuck, all the companies that were there, so many countries and so many companies were all affected by that. So you never know like what's going to happen. I mean, things happen like every day, and it's like all of a sudden one day you have COVID, one day you have the World Trade Center blowing up, the next day you have the stock market crash. But it's not the big things, it's also the little things. And you think like, oh, you know, this happened to this supplier, or that happened to that supplier. And the next thing you know, you need the business continuity to just say like, hey, you know, this is what we need to do. We have to have a system in place to manage what's going to happen, or what's the unexpected, because it's the unexpected, because it's not going to happen. It can never happen to us. That's the thing about it. If it can never happen to you, how do you plan for it? And that's where business continuity comes in place.
Absolutely. And back to my screen, just to mention something that Anthony started with, compliance. So the final control, the final section of Annex A is about compliance. So it's not only GDPR or similar legislations. If we are able to properly identify our stakeholders, we'll be able to identify relevant regulatory bodies as well in different countries as well. So the system helps us have a dynamic and flexible process that allows us also identify all relevant legislation on time. Because let's say that if you find out that you have to comply with something and you find out your obligations in the official journal, it's too late. You need to be ready for new legislation coming up. So this is how the standard helps us be compliant. We are proactive. We are not reactive.
Very good.
Exactly.
Definitely better to be in that position than the other.
Yeah. I would just
Absolutely.
say, I would just add to that is a couple of things. One is that we always have the Plan, Do, Check, Act. And no matter what kind of system that people are in, the idea is that always the system has an opportunity to improve on itself. There's the internal audit like once a year, the external audit once a year. So you always have the opportunity to grow and to change. And with that in mind, it's like, I'm working with one of the companies that I'm working with right now. I started working with them in 2013. And when I started working with them, they had two locations, one in Edison, New Jersey, and one in City Industry. And now they have like 14 different locations. And each one of those locations are certified. So that's like a key is each one of those locations are certified and they're all under one umbrella they're on two certificates, an East Coast and a West Coast, but they're all certified because people want to be able to follow that process. They want to be able to track it. So it's like they know what's happening. They say like, oh yes, you have the one in Pasadena, Texas, or you have the one in like San Francisco or something like that. But the whole process can be tracked. So it's like always good to know like what's happening throughout that process. And one of
Anthony,
the, go ahead.
may I interrupt you, please?
Please, please.
Because I see that we've received a question via YouTube. Another question. So, guys, as you know, we stream live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So, we have been asked to clarify which businesses will need to gain ISO 27001 certification in the US. Is it any business tendering projects with the government? Thank you. So, thank you for the question. As we said at the beginning, companies that work for the government have been required to be 27,001 certified, right, Pamela?
Correct. And anyone who is a vendor, supplier, or works with any portion of the government for DoD has been given or they are being expected to have ISO 27001 in place by or on August 31st in the United States.
Absolutely. And this is applied to the strategic sectors such as transport, energy, information technology, telecommunications, finance, aerospace, chemicals, water supplies, food, and health industries as well. So, guys, as a precaution, please make sure you consider your legal and regulatory obligations and read more, make a consultation with your legal advisors on your obligations if you haven't done it yet. Anthony?
I would just add one thing to that is a lot of times when companies get these contracts and they're bidding on the contracts and stuff like that, we get them and we find out like oh, somebody needs this and they need to be ISO certified yesterday or they don't get the contract. And one of the things that we do for people is like after you sign the contract and after you start the process, we can give you a letter that says the certification is in process. And that helps out a long way when you're getting a contract or something like that. It just clearly states that you are in the process of becoming certified, and this is what the timeline looks like. That and that. So it helps out a lot if you need RFP or something.
Absolutely, Anthony.
Absolutely.
In fact, I use that with a lot, almost all of my IMSM customers for whatever ISO code, and it's the IMSM letter of engagement, and it carries a lot of weight. And one of the things that I was going to mention as well, and no matter what ISO certification code you're looking at uh, with IMSM, to be able to have an ISO certification on your website levels you up above.
Yes.
I think that we have lost Pamela for a second. She'll be back, I know.
Yes.
But I think that we all understand what she wants us to see, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. That if you have if it states on your website, if it states in your business, if it states anywhere that you are ISO certified, that changes the game for you. People will be like, hey, they're looking through companies, they're looking to find a supplier. So if they're looking to find a supplier, it might be the easiest thing for them is to find someone that's ISO certified.
Welcome
Absolutely.
back, Pamela.
Yes, I don't know what happened, but momentary affliction here. But what I found is a lot of people don't understand that are in business, and I was a business owner for myself for 20 years, that a lot of people choose to do business with people that have specific things on their website. And if you don't have something that they're looking for or need on your website, they're going to go on to somebody else that does. And I know a lot of companies look for other companies that are ISO certified to do business with. And this is business that these business owners of all sizes do not realize they're losing. This is like the black hole
Yes.
of business that you're never going to know you lost, because they never contacted you because you didn't have the ISO certification that they wanted you to have on your website. So whenever I'm talking to a prospect, whether I'm cold calling or whether it's somebody that had contacted IMSM, that is one of the first things that I talk about is, you don't even know business that you're losing because you don't have the ISO certification on your website. And that no one has a response to that because no one knows. That's that black hole.
I would say that along those lines, that it's never too late or too soon to start the process. I worked with companies that were just starting up, and as they started up, and it was a one-man company, and then it went to 13 and 14 and etc. But it's never like, oh, we can't start because we're just starting up the company. No, start with the concept. Put ISOs in there because ISOs is a management system. And I've also seen companies that have been around for like 50 years or 60 years. There's one guy, it's like someone told him he's been in the business for like 60 years. He was giving these little bracelets to a company, and they told him that if he didn't become ISO certified, that they could no longer accept the bracelets that he was making. And he said, I've been around for 60 years. Our company's been here forever. And they were like, well, this is like where we're at right now, that we need to know how you do business. And the best way to know how you do business is if you're ISO certified. So it doesn't matter, the size of the company or where you're at, or if you've been around for 60 years or for 2 days, getting certified will help you with your process. It would just like increase your process and increase your value.
Absolutely. And another thing that I always hear too is from people that I'm talking to, companies, well, none of my current customers are asking for this. And when I hear that, I always do go back to the black hole on their website,
Exactly.
that you do not know business that you're losing because you don't have this, because they never contacted you. So
Right.
if you can fill that black hole and understand that this would be one of those things that no one would pass you up if they're looking at your website. So you fill that black hole in.
Exactly.
So, guys, we made it up to 1 hour nearly. So, Lovely talking to you. Shall we wrap it up?
We should wrap it up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Anthony.
And thank you guys.
To all that will be seeing this, and you can contact IMSM for any of your ISO certification needs or consultancy needs or implementation needs. We've been in this business for many, many years in 22 countries. As I always say, we are the big kahuna. You don't want to go with a smaller company and lose money and end up not being certified or having the standards implemented into your process or not end up with your procedure manual. That will never happen with IMSM, and we can guarantee that.
Indeed. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. Marketing, can you take over, please? Thank you.